I need something else to record in then.
Uh,
I guess I'll just use voice recorder because we're probably not going to go past 3 hours.
I do not anticipate us going past 3 hours. Hello, Twitch chat. All right.
All right, so I'll just do that, and we'll figure this out. I mean, the way I fixed it on my stream is I just changed OBS to point at just the mic, and
Yeah.
then it was fine.
Something
So
up
I
with
don't know what the hell is going
yeah.
on, but it's bad.
Probably uninstall, reinstall it, and see what happens.
Yeah, that sounds like probably what I need to do in my copious
Yeah.
spare time. That sounds like a nice thing to do in the middle of a meeting I'm not paying attention to.
Yeah, I made a sound effect thing for. So have either or both of you seen the movie Pretty Woman?
I mean, I've seen of it.
I'm familiar with it.
There's a scene where she comes back to a shop that would not serve her, because she looked poor, right? But she came back with all the stuff that she bought with the wealthy guy that she was currently with. And there's just this line where she's like, "You work on commission, right? Big mistake, huge, for refusing to serve her." And yeah, I just thought it would make a fun soundboard thing. But I was honestly surprised it didn't already exist.
So you had to manufacture it.
I did, and it's probably not loud enough. I might have to mess with the levels or something. I suppose it's from a film that's old enough that it hasn't been memed.
Yeah, there's another program that I may use. I was watching a video on it that like SteelSeries has this new program that's like Voicemeeter but good.
Hey,
And maybe
I
this
use
is
Voicemeeter every day. I really don't think that it's that bad.
Well, I mean, if it's making me sound like a cosmic horror, then that's not good.
It's not good, but also it's an experience that I cannot relate to. But yes, that is very accurate for what it does.
I mean, I would prefer to not sound like a cosmic horror, that if I have the choice. So.
Well, you sound fine to me now. Hello,
Okay.
hello, new chatters. We've got Fossimox John, John HSC, and Kintabor. Thank you so much for being here. All right, let me go to the Discord and announce.
Hello, new friends.
Let's see. See. I know that NVIDIA Broadcaster Studio is also recommended to me by a few people, but that's also for video.
Yeah, actually, I downloaded. It's called SteelSeries Sonic, and apparently it does very similar to what Voicemeeter does, but it has better UI and stuff, which I mean is hard to not have better UI.
I mean, one's a free program that is made like it seems freeware-ish.
Well, this is also free.
Yeah, but it's not. So. It's made by a large corporation, not by
an
a
actual
donation
company. Yes.
Yeah.
And not like a guy. Yeah. I mean, not that made by a guy is a bad thing, but
Hopefully, the SteelSeries program is more dependable.
One would like to think, yeah.
Let me update the news here. I am a little behind on OBS because I just finished up my interview with Heart Queen, which was a lot of fun.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, yes, Dan, we're complaining about Voicemeeter because apparently it made me sound like a cosmic horror at the beginning when we first got on the call. So, and rebooting did not fix it. So, yay.
Okay, tournaments. Cosmic horrors are fun. I think it depends who you ask, Jinx.
They're fun when you're not the cosmic horror.
Right.
I would actually think that's the most fun role to play. I think the other people are the ones that have less fun.
Darkest Dungeon's great.
Like, I like Yogg. I don't want to be Yogg. Like, I don't know.
think if I had to be a Yager or a Yagi, I'd rather be the Yager.
Yeah, I mean, Yogg tends to kill himself a lot, though.
Well, I don't want to do that.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, right? Like,
But
Yogg's
it's
life expectancy is not high.
Just went to an oddly dark place.
I'm just saying is all.
I mean, old gods are kind of inherently dark, you know.
I suppose. Hang on.
I mean,
you're-
it's funny that he got to be an old god because he doesn't seem like he lives very long. But, you know, what do I know about, you know, mythology?
Well said, Floop. Probably best to avoid yogging at all. I know
Yeah.
some people, you know, go yogging on a regular basis. I'm not that fit.
I mean, it's a Yogg eat Yogg world, and we're just living in it.
Mm. I mean, Jinx, that's not a tentacle specific application. I think if you just had extra arms, it would be similar.
Extra arms was pretty good when we had it in standard. So yeah, that's fair.
Had 2 mana.
Yeah. Oh, that Pegling game is very good.
It's
the
a
way.
lot
I
of fun,
bought it.
right? Yeah, yeah.
I may be addicted.
I've been playing it a good bit.
It just came out today in early access, right? Or has it been out before that?
The Haley and I know had access to it a few days early, but I believe it was available today. Yeah, I bought it instantly after watching his videos.
Yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know,
Oh.
Peglin is it's
It's
Peggle.
Peggle meets Slay the Spire.
Yeah, it's a Peggle roguelike. It's fantastic.
Yes. Oh, did I tell you? So my oldest we got her the gaming laptop.
Yes, you mentioned
this
that.
past weekend. So she's already played through Inscription and spoiled the rest of it for me.
Well,
Yeah. I mean,
Should've
it's fine
finished it.
because I'm not going to go back to it. I would not have stuck out with it knowing what was coming. So that it's all for the best. So,
I love
but
that
she
experience.
she is more cultured than I am by your standards now. So
yeah, I really like the experience of playing through it.
Yeah.
You know, it felt laser targeted everything that I like about games, so I was
Yeah.
personally glad.
It sounds like the kind of thing you would like.
I did.
And if you need more recommendations, she's since moved on to the Frog Detective games apparently. So
The what?
the Frog Detective games. She's going through she has unfettered access to my Steam library and all of the games that I've collected from like various Humble bundles over the years. So she's just like going on an archaeological dig right now, like through my Steam library.
My question is about the concept of a frog detective, which is a new concept to me as of this conversation.
I mean, now you know. I mean, it's no different than Avian Attorney, right?
Frog. Oh, this guy. There's a series of frog detective. I thought this was gonna be more involved than it is, but it is just called Frog Detective 1, Frog Detective 2, and Frog Detective 3.
I mean, there's not a lot of depth to the Frog Detective. He's just a detective who happens to be a frog. You're a detective and a frog, and it's time to solve a mystery. That is the description of game number 1. That's it. I mean, it doesn't get simpler than that, you know?
Yeah. It'd go along well with a well-dressed alligator.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I wonder if like Avian Attorney is like the second half of that Law and Order sketch, you know?
it's possible.
You know? These are just things that I think about when I'm sitting in meetings.
You should have less meetings.
I should have less. I supposedly have less meetings tomorrow. I may actually get a chance to do actual work tomorrow afternoon.
That's exciting. Right. I think I have the show notes updated, and then we will start as soon as Edel gets back.
Yep. I mean, Frogger is simple, but in Frogger, the frog is the crime, and the frog detective solves the crime.
Let's see. All right.
Edel, what are your thoughts on
As
frogs who are
said.
also detectives?
And I'm not gonna starve. We're good.
She didn't hear me.
Frog detective.
Oh wait,
Yes.
hang on.
Yeah.
Say something again.
Okay, so what are your
Detective.
opinions on frogs who are also detectives?
How did this come up, Chad? What?
Well, my oldest got her gaming laptop over the weekend, and so she's been like doing an archaeological dig through my Steam library. So I picked her up from work, and she told me on the way home that she's been playing Frog Detective. Well, she played Frog Detective 2 first, and then because that was alphabetically before Frog Detective 1 for some reason
Oh,
in the Steam library.
okay.
Yes.
It's a trilogy.
Well, the third one's not out yet, apparently, but yes.
That's cool, I
Yeah.
guess. I'm more of an Ace Attorney, Danganronpa kind of girl, you know. But
Avian Attorney?
haven't done that one. Nope.
The pigeon Ace Attorney game?
Nope.
Or
That
was
one is
Hatoful,
fun.
Hatoful Boyfriend? Hatoful Boyfriend was the pigeon dating sim, right?
Oh God.
So,
Anyway,
I think
we should probably do a podcast
we
before
could
this
do the
goes in a
Hearthstone
very weird
podcast.
direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because all these games where animals have jobs, like, it's not what Bodicus would have wanted.
I know Bodicus would be just yelling at me right now, like just like what I just made room for you in this seat, and this is what you're doing with it. You just bring up all kinds of animals with occupations. Like, what are you doing?
It's okay. Listen,
I'm not gonna lie, not what I anticipated coming back to after that brief.
You left us alone
interlude.
for like a good 3 minutes. What did you expect was
know.
gonna happen?
I
I
really
didn't expect the
was
Frog
rushing
Detective
it.
either. Yeah. It's okay. All right.
It's been a day.
Are we recording? Who's recording?
I am now recording, yes.
Recording.
I am recording. Okay. Looks normal. Looks good. Seems all right. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Starting the show in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you. Never lose hope.
Here, Fred shouts.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, Fred.
Hello and welcome to episode 341 of Coin Conceit, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the path side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, April 28th in the evening. From Gadgetan, New York, it's me, Ridiculous Et. From Nomergon, Ohio, we have Edelweiss.
Hello.
And from Northern Massachusetts, we've got Wicked Good.
Hi.
From where you are, listener, we've got you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Extra special thanks to those of you who left us reviews. It really helps other people find the show. We'll read those out on the bonus episode that we're recording this weekend with some special guest appearances. It'll be a lot of fun. And big thanks, extra special, super duper thanks to all of our patrons for supporting us. You're wonderful, and you know it, and I hope you know it. So you can find how to be a patron of our show over at patreon.com/coinconceit. We appreciate all the support. Life and Ladder. Let's go. So the patch came out, and we're going to spend basically the entire episode talking about it. But Life and Ladder, Steve, you wrote something that looks joyful, so tell me about it.
Well, I found my fun this week. So Theo posted a dragon control priest. And so I am not yet convinced that this is good, but I am convinced that it is fun. And I am at a point on Ladder where I am just happy to be there right now, and I am just enjoying playing Draconid Operative and make my secret agents come through and having fun. It's not bad. I mean, I've got like close to a 50% win rate with it, which is about as much. I mean, for Priest right now, that's a victory. I have had a game where I played against a Kazakhstan warrior, and I drac up their 0 mana Kazakhstan that they had from the depths twice, and by the fact that it was 0 mana also told me that it was in somewhere in the bottom 3 cards because they'd hit it with from the depths twice. So I knew I didn't have to worry about slamming Mutinous anytime soon, and just played my Kazakhstan and cleared their board and Embers of Ragnaros them on the next turn, and For some reason, they didn't want to keep playing. I don't really know why, but I could see that being a little bit annoying. And I've also had a game where I somehow queued into a mirror, which I was very much not expecting to happen. And they stole my Kazakhstan with a Draconid operative, and I still won that game. So that was okay. But it's fun, and I mean, it's basically like the old kind of quest pre-shell with it's because now that you don't have to run like all dragons in the deck because you don't have to draw 3, you just have to play the 4. So you can run Spirit Guide, and you can run Light Shower Elemental, you can run Meta. I had a game where I got a board full of Metas and finally fulfilled that dream. So it's a little bit easier to build the deck because I think like that was one of the things that we tried like that day 2 stream that Ella and I did, and it was when we had to do it all full of dragons, it was leaving something to be desired. But when you can actually play some of the good minions, it's not bad. And maybe with some refinement, it'll get somewhere. But sometimes you beat the Demon Hunters, sometimes the Demon Hunters beat you, and but at least you got to play the sweet card. So, I'm having fun.
The games that you described, it sounds like you had more than one person's worth of fun. So I am glad to hear that. And it's been interesting to see all the experimentation with dragons, just playing minions to enable Kazakhstan instead of playing not minions. I like that more.
Yeah.
Edel, what have you been trying? Because I know you've been trying some stuff.
Oh my. Well, I've kind of been all over the place, was trying to make the Mech Paladin thing work, and even with various techs, it felt just not really able to get there against Demon Hunter. I tried adding the 1/4 lifesteal that Battlecry hit something, and my thought process was, well, if we can buff it with Prismatic Lens or with the 2/2 that dredges, and you dredge it up and you do the power toughness onto that. Did not happen, like not even once in a dozen games or something. So I kept getting them in hand with no way to buff. And I think Samuro is at least like good enough, even if it doesn't get buffed. Sometimes you hit the 2/2, it clears all the 1/1s. That's like as good as you're able to get. But yeah, those were feeling not so great. It did come around better when I put in Twin Fin Twin. That let me do a bit more stuff, because that you can still clear a 4/4 or a couple of 2/2s even when it's not buffed. And so I was having a decent, but I mean, that got me to be like 50-50 on the deck. So eventually I moved on from Mech Paladin, went over to my old Sathino combo list, and then immediately lost like 6 games in a row. It's just everyone's running Mutinous, and or all of the slower decks for the most part are running Mutinous. Some Mutinous and Vol'jin, and everyone's running Vipers, it feels like, as well. Which doesn't even super matter for my deck, but it matters against Quest Hunter, because you need the lifesteal to be able to sort of win the race against the Quest Hunters. And so I've learned that I have to do a multi-strike turn on the Eldraki Warblades, or they're just going to Viper it. And I finally was like, what is even happening, when I played against a player that I was not familiar with named Earleg.
Yes,
and
the legend.
Yeah, this player apparently has been, according to Hat, has been playing Tempo Bless Priest since they printed Bless. I did not know this. I did conclude, based on some of the early minions, that, okay, this is probably a Bless deck, so, once they had gotten something to a 2/7, I played my Sigil of Silence. I'm like, all right, we're chilling, it's going to do that, we clear. And then turn 6, Mida Pure Light comes down. I'm like, wait a minute.
My girl.
Wait a minute. This is a Bless deck. What is happening? And like a Spellstone gets traded, and I'm just like, what? What? This is too much. I cannot play around this when I don't know what's happening. And we ended up losing to like an 18 power Mida, because even after I cleared the board, they immediately Thrive in Shadows to get it back out of the deck. Wasn't guaranteed. There were a decent number of spells, but they did hit it. and so just couldn't get there after, I cleared with Sathino, and I had the Jace ready, but there was just not enough fel spells in the Jace to get there. I did get my revenge when I queued into him later, or I assume it's
Oh, this
him.
was a series. This wasn't even just one game.
Yeah, later queued into Earleg again, and this time I knew what was up. So I saved the Sigil of Silence for turn 6. We got both the, 5/5 that draws a Holy and a Shadow spell, and the Mida. We got the clear, had Hero into Sathino, into Jace. We did the things, we got there. But, whew, that was not really what I was expecting to run into. Most of the priests I'd been facing were Boar Priest.
That deck is so not good. I
Yeah.
did a coaching last night with that, and we won 2 out of 3, and it felt like the most excruciating wins that I've had in Hearthstone in a long time. Like, just scrimping to try to get all the boars out. That is not a good deck. But Earleg, I am very interested in his ideas and would like to subscribe to his newsletter, because that sounds like exactly the amount of BS that I want to be doing right now.
It's the Hearthstone that you two are describing sounds like a pretty great Hearthstone. I have not seen either friendly metas or opposing metas. I've seen neither. I've seen more, I'm gonna say it, normal things. Seen more normal things, but sounds like fun. Yeah, I haven't played as much as I'd like post patch because it came out on a Tuesday night, and yeah, I just had work and stuff to do to keep up with, but I've done a bunch of coachings. The format is interesting. We're going to talk about this a lot, about the feelings in Dexplanations. But it's this interesting combination of both unexplored and limited, because there are a lot of classes that I want to play that I don't think they have anything to do. But, when you look at something like Paladin, I think Paladin is very interesting, where you have the mech direction that's definitely gotten a lot better. You have the holy direction. You have now that dragon is being explored. There's a bunch of stuff going on there. Curious to see where that goes. But, I've been trying out mech paladins. All right. I've been playing a little bit of Quest Hunter. It's all right. Demon Hunter definitely feels like people are more aware of it. I've been trying some warrior decks. Charge Warrior in particular. Still a little slower than I'd like for a deck to be, but at least it attacks for a bunch of damage. I like that part. It's an interesting format so far. I'm gonna go into my feelings a little bit more in Dexplanations, but I haven't really had a ton of time to play, so there's nothing that I've immediately clicked with and been drawn to. Seems fine overall, but there are definitely some classes that just don't have a lot to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, we may be, first of all, we have a Masters Tour this weekend. That'll probably bring out some innovation, hopefully. Like,
Yeah.
There may be some things that people are holding back for the Masters Tour to kind of unleash them on the tournament. That tends to happen. I don't know specifically what those would be, but there may be something hidden there. It may also just be that, like, there really hasn't been enough time to try to figure out how to attack this meta yet, because the meta that we have is fairly significantly different than the meta we had like 3 days ago. And so, people weren't really trying to target Demon Hunter 3 days ago, because good luck going into 60% Druid. Right. And then so, like, some people were trying to do it, and some of our co-hosts were trying to do it, but you had to kind of accept that you were going to have like a suboptimal win rate overall unless you happened to roll into the right class. So it's possible that this meta could, has some room to grow, but I think that the kind of the first week of just Druidstone kind of stunted its growth a little bit, and it does kind of feel a little bit weird right now, I guess is the word I would use.
Yeah, it's typically these 4-set metas. We've talked about it before in the show. It is fairly common for a couple class to have more complete kits, for the first patch to be a nerf to bring them in line, and then for the next patch a month in to have a big pile of buffs. And it does feel like that this environment would benefit from a big pile of buffs. But it's not exactly bad right now. I feel like there are a lot of options, a lot of decks that will be around on next week's show that we don't know about yet on today's show. But also, I would be very surprised if any of them were rogue, priest, shaman, or warlock. I'd be very surprised if we got decks in those 4 classes that have really taken us by surprise. So we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, Paladin has a bunch of options. Demon Hunter still feels Demon Huntery. Druid, I think I'm happiest with where Druid has landed so far. There have been allegations made that alignment Druid is broken again. The stats indicate that is not the case, but I'm sure in Conquest lineups that people will bring it, whatever. On ladder, it is not performing at a level I would call OP, or at a level that I would call above 50% win rate.
Yeah.
But, people are telling me it's good.
I have lost to it. It didn't. It felt just as annoying as it did before. I mean, it's
I
got
don't love that
different
card.
things that it can do, but
It beats Quest Hunter. Quest Hunter cannot function underneath an alignment. It probably beats that deck. But the stats don't indicate that it's all that broken. I like that the nerfs were significant, but the archetype still seems intact and has some clear weaknesses. We'll see what happens in a week. I don't know. But I have heard a lot less about Druid lately. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where we are in a week. And right now I'm kind of like, all right. But generally I don't fall in love with 4-set metas anyway, so this is not atypical for me. It's not bad, but it's not what I'm excited about currently, and I'm curious to see what they cook up. We'll talk more about this in Dexplanations, but we've talked about the nerf patch. We should probably talk about what the nerfs are in the news for anyone that hasn't heard them yet. Let's go.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
So the big news that was announced precisely half a day after our last show was that they changed a bunch of stuff. We found out about it via twitter.com/Gallon_HS, I believe. I don't remember if there's an underscore or not. It's Gallon's Twitter. More unofficial communications than we were expecting. And the patch came out on Tuesday, 2 days ago. And there was a bunch of stuff in most formats. So we're going to start with Standard, because that's what we talk about here mostly. First change, Kazaka-san. The most important change. Kazaka-san used to be, if all minions in your deck are dragons, craft a custom deck of treasures. This includes an empty deck, or a deck with no minions. Now it says, if you played 4 other dragons this game. That's the battle cry. So there is no deck building restriction at all. It is a question of a number of dragons you have played. Has to be 4 other ones. So this has to be your 5th dragon or later. Pretty significant change. Qualifies as a rework, in my humble opinion. We have Miracle Growth, which went from 7 mana to 8 mana. We have the 3rd portion of the Warrior quest line, Secure the Supplies. I didn't know that. It used to be 2 pirates, now it's 3 pirates. Another quest is 3 pirates per stage, total of 9 pirates. Puffer Fist went from a 3/4 to a 3/3. And then Switcheroo was nerfed to swap health only instead of swap both stats. Nice change. It has also been banned in Wild. And also for Wild, Kael'thas has been put to every 3rd spell you cast each turn costs 1. He still costs 6. We've never had this exact version. In Ashes, he was nerfed to 7. In Ashes, he was nerfed to 7
they nerfed
first.
him twice, didn't they?
They did.
They nerfed him to 7, and then they nerfed the text box. They didn't do
Correct.
it. Okay.
So this is 6 mana with this text box, which is a combination we've never had. I don't think it matters. I think this is still dead in Wild, because in Wild 0 and 1 are tremendously super duper different. I mean, in Standard too, but the deck, I haven't played much Wild, but I have not seen anyone posting any pictures of this. They had the 1 mana text box in Wild forever, and getting to the base casting cost was never the problem here, so I'm going to say that this deck is probably dead, considering it also played Kazaka-san, the dragon variant. Those strategies are largely eliminated, which is probably for the best. So, constructed changes. Dexplanations is all about the feel of the Standard meta, but we can take a second here and talk about where we think they landed with these changes and why we think they made them meta-wise. Let's start with you. What do you think here?
Yeah, so I think that, the intent with Kazaka-san is clearly to have it played in... I mean, I think the goal was really to have it not played in Druid, have it not be the persistent endgame of Druid. The way it has played out seems to be that it's way easier to do in Control, which I'm on board with, right? You can just include X number of dragons. In Warrior, you've already got Raid Boss Onyxia and your 2 Onyxian Drakes. So you just need to throw an Amalgam or 2 in there, and you're good to go. Same, I tried this in Paladin. You can use the Dungeoneer there, and that gives you your dragon cycle. So some people have even been including a dragon package in their Holy Smite decks. And, that's interesting. Again, it's not coming out super quickly most of the time, and you're not playing it with 20 mana. But some people are still just throwing Amalgam into the Druids because you can Amalgam a Whelp from Scales. And so the Amalgam is a dragon, and then it gives you another dragon. You just take whatever is cheapest, so that when you do your same thing of drawing through your whole deck, you just toss out some dragons at some point, and if you need the Kazakusan, it is there against control decks. Granted, it is slower, so it makes it easier-ish for the control decks to mutinous on time, because okay, they need to have played this many minions, and the fact that they have to have played those minions means they're not in their hand to get eaten instead by mutinous or be put into play by Vol'jin. But you very much, if you are concerned about Kazakusan, you still need to be running mutinous or Vol'jin to deal with it. So I'm not super thrilled about that. Miracle Growth, I mean, yeah, I guess it costs more. I have not super noticed games that I would have lost if Miracle Growth was 7 and I won because it was 8. I felt like between Innervate and just the ramp package, it hasn't been a huge impact. And Puffer Fist feels great at 3 health. And the Warrior Quest, I felt like it was their early game that was really solid anyway, more sort of the health of the minions than the quest actually getting completed. Glad it got touched for certain players, but yeah, that's kind of what I got.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, a couple things about the Druids putting in Amalgams. One is it gives you more things you can hit with Mutinous or Vol'jin, because if they're only running the 4 dragons, right, then, or they're relying on the Amalgams to get there, if you eat the Amalgam or you Vol'jin out the Amalgam, then that takes away their ability to play Kazakusan, so it makes them a little bit more vulnerable. Also, they're putting Amalgams in their deck instead of whatever else was there, right? I will take an Amalgam all day over, over like Battlegrounds Battlemaster, which I'm sure is probably one of the things that got cut. I don't know exactly what they're cutting, but they're cutting something that I didn't like to put in a 2 mana 2/3. I'm okay with that. And I played against a couple of Ramp Druids the first day with Control Warrior, and I beat them, which I didn't very often do before the nerf.
Sure.
So that seemed like a pretty good nerf. And I mean, the kinds of decks that you and I are playing probably won't notice the Miracle Growth change, but the kinds of decks that Hat likes to play probably would, because if you're having to wait until 9 mana to be able to Miracle Growth Earthen Scales, as opposed to 8, sometimes that's the difference between winning and losing against an aggro deck. So, I mean, from that perspective, it kind of,
The biggest thing about the Druid nerfs is that when you're playing Druid, your good matchups are worse and your bad matchups are worse, which means it was a meaningful balance change. The Quest Hunter matchup remains good. Every other matchup got worse, especially against control decks. So, it's not unbeatable, right? But you gotta choose what you're building towards. If you want to be a bit more defensive, a bit more anti-aggro, you basically cannot play Kazakusan, and that means that you lose to Brawls. And if you want to be greedier and you want to play Kazakusan, then that means that you lose to Multi-Strikes, among other things. And before it felt like Druid always had a chance against both, and now it feels like you have to choose which one you're close against, and that is a healthier spot, to the point where I don't think that they over-nerfed it, but the impact was substantial, significant, and immediately noticeable. So they didn't want people to complain about Druid anymore. Seems like they fixed that for the most part. Though, again, we'll see Masters Tours players who may not want to get alignmented may have a different opinion, but they can always just ban it.
Alignment Anacondra is just never something I'm happy to see.
Yeah. But the deck it's not winning a bunch on ladder in a ladder environment. So remains to be seen what it looks like in Conquest, if it even gets played. But Conquest right now, it feels pretty difficult to figure out because I don't think that you can effectively bully. There just aren't enough good decks in this format for Conquest to feel like you can bring a complete lineup. I have to submit in 3 different THL series later tonight, and I have no clue what I'm bringing.
Yeah,
no
same.
clue.
Yeah.
Same.
me
And I'm
too.
like between two decks that I am not interested in playing, and I'm trying to figure out which one I'm less interested in not playing, which is not a great place to be. But basically, like, I'm gonna have to jam a million games of one of these decks that I don't particularly care for this weekend in order to figure it out. So, yeah.
Yep. I mean, I feel happy about these changes. When I've played with and against the Pufferfist as well, the health was noticeable in every game. It mattered. I could deal with it. Card still good. It just no longer is like, well, what do I do now? I can't play minions ever. And I haven't died to 2 12/12s on turn 3, so like that's a positive experience. But also, in retrospect, that's the sort of experience that you shouldn't notice because you don't have it. So, like, I'm glad I don't have it, but it's not like every game I play, if I lose, I'm like, well, at least I didn't die to 2 12/12s. No, it's a dissatisfier, not a satisfier. So that not being a thing is great, but it's not significant to me because it just never should have been the game.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not the target audience for that, right? Like, your target audience are like somebody who just came back to Hearthstone, right? And they're playing ranked, and then all of a sudden they just died to 2 12/12s. Like, okay, that was fun. I'm going back to playing whatever I was playing before, right? Like, that's the kind of that's an exit point. That, like,
Yeah.
Twinfin Twitcheroo was like just a clear exit point for a lot of like returning players, I'm sure, because like you play against that, and it's like, well, what do I even do against this? And then you just kind of nope out. So I think that for the game as a whole, I think it's good. And I like that Pufferfist dies to Nether Drakes. That I'm a fan of. Where
Or
it didn't before.
Fire Sale.
Or fire sales, or a lot of things that it didn't die to before. I think that's good, because I mean, with that text box and the 4 health, it was a lot. So I'm glad it's not a spider tank anymore. I mean, I think the changes feel healthy. I think a lot of people were kind of hoping that this was gonna open up like a new renaissance of deck building, and we just haven't seen that. But it's also been only 2 days, and we have a Masters Tour coming up where people may be holding stuff back.
Yeah. It's Warrior and Paladin both feel a lot more interesting, like they have a ton of options to explore. DH is kind of this it's kind of this cloud of cards where you're playing most of the same cards, but you can dramatically tweak matchups by a couple inclusions here or there. And it feels powerful and interesting, and I wish Drekthar was a worse card, but the other 29 cards in the deck are cool. Druid, I think, is fascinating to also look at the matchup spreads you're going to run into and see what's going on. Hunter feels fairly binary, and like it is setting the minimum speed limit of the format right now. There needs to be some deck doing that. But this is a deck that we've seen for a while, and it really is one of the few from-hand decks we have right now, along with Demon Hunter with a good draw. So you need to have some kind of from-hand deck, but again, it is a quest deck that has been around for a while, that has gotten better over time. I am unsurprised if people are a little bored with it, and the Face Hunter is just not a thing you would ever play. So there's some experimentation, but also I have watched people try and build a variety of rogue decks, and there's just, you're playing pirates and taking your 49% win rate and roll with it, and otherwise there's just nothing there. And in Shaman, there are so many cool Shaman cards. It's just so not what the format is about right now. I wanted Snowfall Guardian to be bad, but not like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say about Rogue, because I know that's been a topic of discussion. I think like Rogue has been so dominant for so long, like going back to Descent of Dragons, maybe before that, but certainly like Descent of Dragons, right? Like there's been like a top tier Rogue deck in basically every meta.
Probably
I'm
before
okay
that.
with it. Yeah, and probably a little bit before that, but certainly Descent of Dragons is when I remember like really feeling it.
Yeah.
Like it's okay for Rogue to take a set off, right? Like to have like one deck it's fine. It's not broken. It's not, it's not terrible. It's just kind of there. It's kind of okay for Rogue to have a set like that, right? Like every class kind of gets its turn. and Rogue hasn't had its turn for quite a while. So I think that the fact that it has a deck at all, when some of these metas, we've had some of these classes that just have had nothing going on.
Like
I
Warlock
think
right now.
that's good.
Like
Like,
Warlock
well,
right
I mean,
now.
yeah, like Warlock, yeah,
Right now, and
Like,
also most of last set.
yeah.
Yeah. It's speaking as a rogue main, I'm cool with chilling. I want to draw more cards, but sometimes we don't get to do that. It's okay. Somehow they printed a 4-mana unconditional Dragoncaster, and the class is not that great. I'm glad that didn't end up being too spooky. I'm sure there'll be stuff to do. I was describing this in another Discord recently, and I called it rogue privilege. We're like, oh no, we only get a 3-mana 4/3 weapon. Whatever shall we do? Like rogue is doing fine, but there are a lot of classes where you have somewhere between 0 and 1 options. And that is just the way that 4-set metas tend to go sometimes. Feels a little pronounced in Voyage. I don't think it's inherently a bad thing, but it's definitely the kind of meta that I know I don't click with. And that is what's happening now where I am. There's nothing that I look at a deck list and I'm like, I have to get into Hearthstone right now to play this. I have heard rumors of Quest Druid. If that's good, I might try it out. Because the idea of Bran Guff feels pretty good.
I did that in
Very
Duels
fun.
today. It did feel good.
Yeah.
Branzola Guff in Duels.
Oh my.
Yeah,
That's a lot of guff.
that is that's a lot of beef right there. Absolutely.
We can talk more later, but there was an enemy Cariel at 23, and I just OTK'd them
With Quest
without
Druid?
Viper. Without the Viper.
without the Viper. No Viper in the deck.
So you attacked for 50.
48. But yeah.
It's,
But who's
We'll round
counting,
up.
really?
she is. And also, I'm guessing afterwards the opponent was in the replay. How did I do
Yeah.
that? Yeah. So we'll talk more about our feelings on Standard, but like that's basically where I'm at right now. But I think these are good nerfs. I do also anticipate a buff patch, probably in 4-ish weeks if I had to guess, because we're getting pretty close to the 0.2 patch, which is usually a month after the launch of the expansion, and that's usually the BG's experience. Which is hopefully coming soon, because I know our BG's friends are definitely looking for something new and exciting before Lobby Legends, or maybe after. I don't know. We don't have timing on that yet, but that would be my anticipation for the next patch. And that patch very rarely has significant standard changes because they got to put so many resources into BG's. So then I would expect the next standard balance patch to be in probably 4 weeks, unless they have a reason to move faster. And if that's the case, then I would anticipate some buffs too. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we usually get a buff patch like right before the mini set, certainly in 4-set metas, right? Like that's been pretty common. Like the last, well, you know, when we had a mini set like this.
Barring Mercenaries disruptions, it's been pretty consistent of set release, 2 weeks later balance, month after that balance including buffs, shortly after that release the mini set, shortly after that another balance patch which maybe has a couple of nudges up and down, and then release the next expansion. That's pretty typical what we see. So I would imagine that pattern will stay similar, but we haven't heard anything yet. We just got a balance patch 2 days ago. I'm not going to predict the next one. But we're definitely in a position where a couple classes could stand to be a little bit more nuanced in terms of what options they have available, or maybe those options could be more competitive. So we'll see. In addition, there were a bunch of BG's changes. They really hit the new hero Innie pretty hard. Her old passive was after 9 friendly minions die, get a random mech. Now it's after 12 friendly minions die, which is worse. So, you know, that's changed. They nerfed SI Sephin from Avenge 3 to Avenge 4 for getting poisoned. They moved Cold Light Seer to Tavern Tier 4. They really want Murlocs to be worse. Baby Crush got nerfed as well. It is a smaller unit, and it summons a smaller Devilsaur. And Dawngrasp Buddy also moved to Tavern Tier 3 and got a little bit worse. So we're not hugely into BGs, and I have not had time to play any of these, but the feedback that I've gotten from my BG's friends is I'm ready for the next patch, and I'm ready for buddies to rotate out. So that's what I've mostly heard, and that these seem like fine changes. I know that Sephin was brought up a lot, and Cold Light Seer to 4 is pretty devastating. But beyond that, I just know that we are very close to new BG's content, and it sounds like it's definitely wanted at the moment. Cool. So we had some duels changes too. Had a really fun duels experience where I was on a Duels podcast, Oops All Duels, this past weekend. I was their first guest. And Tabayrak, the Duels developer, Atesh, who's been on our show before, was just in the chat. And then he shoots me a DM on Discord like 45 minutes in the show. Hey, can I jump in? So he did. We just dropped him into chat. And then he was on the show for 45 minutes. It was fantastic. And what he said about the first change here about Humble Blessings, I'm trying to find the screenshot. Yeah, I probably made a boo-boo here. So Humble Blessings, it's changed the attack, health, and cost of all your minions to 3 for the rest of the game. He moved it to 3 mana. The dev comment says, my bad, moved it back to 4. Pretty funny stuff.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Everything else on the card is 3. The cost may as well be 3 too, you know?
Yeah. Well, turns out it wasn't a great idea.
It was pretty rough at 5, right? I think the very original cost was 5.
They've moved it around mana cost a few times. I believe it was at 5 to 3, then to 4, then back to 3. And then back to 4. I don't remember that exactly, but I do know that he seemed pretty clear in saying, yeah, this one was a mistake. Let's see. So yeah. Probably for the best that it got nerfed. I know that with Onyxia, that's a lot of 3/3s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Repeatedly. So, they also nerfed the Elise starting treasure academic research. It used to be start of game, draw this, gain in a full mana crystal, and it upgrades each time a friendly minion dies. It was nerfed to you do not draw at the start of game, and you gain empty mana crystals. Substantially worse. Steve, I think you and I were playing the same deck of Druid Priest, Elise's Druid and Priest,
right.
So we were playing Quest Priest with this. So you would go turn 1 quest.
I actually don't have this unlocked, so I never had the pleasure of playing the unnerfed version, but yeah, I've lost to it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, because what you would do is turn 1 quest, turn 2 coin bees, turn 3 gain 5 full crystals and play Guff. It was disgusting.
Gross. Yeah.
That's offensive.
Edel, I posted a couple screenshots in the Discord where my turn 6 was Psychic Scream, Sheldress, Zyrella. And turn 7 was draw the Purified Shard and you're dead now. Yeah. It was too good.
Like I had to do it like you know, walking uphill both ways in the snow by by twig into the 2 mana priest weapon, the shadow one, and that was like the busted, like the old and busted way to get all your mana. So yeah, I think this is. I mean, it's also, I don't know if it's been fixed yet. It was bugged, so it was basically just deleted from the game entirely when the patch came out. I don't know if that's been fixed, but certainly it was nerfed and then it was bugged, so you couldn't even play it to begin with, which is substantially worse than even the nerfed version. So
yeah. Yeah, the bug right now, I believe it just does actually nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically. Or no, it gains, the bug, I believe, is that it gains empty temporary crystals. So you basically innervate for all those crystals except they're empty and then they vanish at the end of the turn. It doesn't really do very much. Maybe there's an Omu interaction there where you can actually get something out of it. But yes, I believe that will be fixed in the near future.
I only wish that was released on April 1st, because that would be the best April Fool's prank ever.
It'd be very funny. Something that we know for next turn. They nerfed a couple other things. They changed some other things. Valor's Display, the Drekthar starting treasure that kills everything and then equips a random weapon, now costs 7. Tempest Fury, which was the Shaman starting treasure, the 3 mana 2/3 weapon that when you attack you lightning bolt something. Now it's a 4 mana 3/3, which I think is kind of neutral, all things considered. You get the lightning bolt slower, but it's bigger. They added Overload 1 to Finley's power-up hero power, which was give a minion Divine Shield and Wind Fury. Scales of Justice, the Finley starting treasure, got nerfed by 1 mana, and Old Faithful, the Brand starting treasure, got nerfed by 1 mana. There was an interesting discussion that I briefly skimmed through on Squelch yesterday, talking about how the new heroes definitely feel a bit at odds with the mode because they were designed to beat bosses with 300 health and not other human beings. I've had my fun with them, but also, again, as I described earlier, I had my fun, but my opponent died to a purified shard on turn 7. I don't know if that fun was equal. I can definitely see the concern about the power level here, even though I do think it's cool to add stuff to the class, to the mode that's interesting and fresh and different. But we're going to talk about this on a Duels bonus episode coming in the very near future. So, more time for Duels talk.
Yeah. I'm just happy I get to emote crumpets at people again. Like that's all I need. I don't care about anything else. I just get to say crumpets to people, and that's delightful.
Yes. It is true. Crumpets. So, there are also some bug fixes. The double casting thing that was working with Twinbow Terracoil or Electro Storm Surge on Nagalings, when you would play a Nagaling and it would double cast, that's been fixed because it's not supposed to do that.
Yeah. It's interesting that was for Electro Storm Surge too, and that's just been there like for years, and we've just never found it until like Twinbow Terracoil.
Unless they reworked it recently, like I don't know.
Yeah, that's possible too.
This is one of those bugs that I was sad I didn't get to play the deck while it existed, because it did seem pretty sweet. It was powerful. I don't think it was like breaking any win rates, but the interaction was pretty bizarre. I mean, you were the one that kind of
I was on the
us to
receiving
this
end of
effect.
it.
Yeah.
And I did the math on it, and you're like, it was over 50% to get a spell that goes face off of School Teacher. So you could get that to happen fairly often. I think it was like 56 or 58% to get some sort of a spell. I mean, some of them are like, Wound Prey, so they're not all doing a ton of damage, but I mean, when you're adding all that spell damage to it, it doesn't really matter. I've gotten to experience that from the other end. I'm glad that that's fixed, because I never want that to happen again.
So. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm glad it's fixed. I'm just also sad that I didn't get to try it before it went away. And so, does this also change Talented Arcanist for other things? Like, can you still Talented Arcanist Jace to try and hit Fel Barrage, or will it just not work anymore?
They don't call it out, but I would imagine that something like Talented Arcanist is a card like Twinbow Terracoil and Electro Storm Surge, but they don't really say like what the like encompasses.
Right.
But I mean, it's I would assume that the like means something that has the words your next spell, right? Which is something that is also on Talented Arcanist. So I would like to think that it behaves that way, because I mean, that was certainly part of the beating that I received that day. But it's hard to, it's hard to say when it's, it's hard to know from this exactly which cards are included and which ones aren't.
Sure.
Yeah, they usually fix these on a per card basis. The bugs, for anyone that was unaware, basically both Twinbow Terracoil, like the things that say your next spell is cast twice, and Talented Arcanist, which says your next spell has +2 spell damage. The Nagalings or any cast when drawn cards would get the benefit without using it up. So the cast when drawn spell, the Nagaling spell, would get the spell damage or would cast twice, and you would still be able to do the next spell you played would still have +2 spell damage and would still cast twice. Unclear which of those things changed, were fixed, or were intended. I know Arcanist has been weird and then fixed and then weird again. Because my understanding is that with Arcanist, it would affect the first spell off your Jace or whatever. I don't even know if that's intended, but at least it would use up the buff. I hope it uses up the buff now, so we'll see.
Yeah.
A couple other bugs that were fixed. Lockalar was granted to any players that hadn't unlockalared it. Unstable Evolution now has the Echo keyword. They fixed some of the bugs for Bob's Bazaar's user interface, though my understanding is that those have resurfaced. So we'll see. And we know about the academic research bug, and we know that the Warrior Hero Power history tile has art that's too zoomed in, which I guess is important for people to know about. So, yeah. Then also Leroy's in the shop. So you want to go buy Leroy. He's a Paladin hero, I think?
Yes, he is. And you get 5 Paladin packs with that bundle as well.
Well, all right. And I think that does it for news. And so we can head into tournaments real quick before... Oh, should mention, Man-at-Arms clarifies in chat. It is a different voice actor from Leroy, from the one that we know. So if that is something that you would potentially be disappointed by, probably don't spend money on this. So yeah. That's it for qualifiers. So... No, that's it. Hi, Edelweiss in the future.
Qualifiers yet. Yeah.
Hello, Edelweiss in the future. You're going to hear my voice here where I put a bunch of markers. It's okay. So that's going to do it for news. Let's head into qualifiers and tournaments so we can get ready for Masters Tour Sunken City.
It's the grand tournament.
So we had the final week of qualifiers for Masters Tour 4 this past weekend. As one would expect, given that all these balance changes had not gone into place yet, Druid was the star of the show once again, featuring a 30% ban rate and a 56 or 57% win rate. So it had the best win rate and was banned over 30% of the time. So some people were trying to target it still and were not particularly successful. It was still a particularly popular deck. It was in a lot of winning lineups. The next best decks are the kinds of decks that you would expect. Aggro Demon Hunter was very good. Quest Hunter, again, did very well, though it wasn't the best performing deck, but it still came in third. Control Warrior and Control Paladin were both very good. And the Fel version of Demon Hunter, which is a little bit better against the control decks because it puts out a little bit more damage with Jace, that also was above 50%. And everything else was just kind of different, different 40 to 45% win rates. One thing that did happen over the course of the weekend is that some players started taking Druid out of the lineup because they went for a full target Demon Hunter strat. So they would just go with Demon Hunter, Control Paladin, Control Warrior, and leave Druid out entirely because theoretically that would leave the Druid a little bit open to be targeted. Not really, but if you know that everyone's bringing Demon Hunter, you could just go ahead and target that. You don't need to worry about just drawing the ban. So that was a thing that happened throughout the weekend. Those lineups weren't as successful in terms of winning, but they did have you did see some variety in the lineup composition as the weekend went on. So that's something that happened. That meta doesn't matter anymore because that meta is gone. We do have, as Hat said, we have Masters Tour Sunken City starting in about 6 hours from when we're recording this tonight on Thursday. It starts at the YouTube stream starts at about 1:30 a.m. Eastern because it is on the EU server. You do get drops from watching. So once again, you'll get Sunken City packs for watching. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that event this weekend. Again, there could be some decks that people have been holding back. I've been hearing some interesting things from the Pony Dojo about some decks that might be good that I will not divulge yet, but I will be happy to talk about in a little bit more detail next week. But I had a conversation with Prancing Pony, who runs that, and he told me what the deck that he thought was going to be dominant was, and it certainly was not the deck that I was thinking of. So we will talk about that a little bit more next week. We did have some qualifiers randomly for the 2022 Asian Games, which is featuring a number of esports, including Hearthstone. I know there were some Indian qualifiers that happened over the past week or two, and the Play Hearthstone KR channel just suddenly popped up with relatively little fanfare was broadcasting the entire qualifier. I unfortunately wasn't able to find the results from it. And I don't know if there are any more of those coming on, but some of the other channels apparently may be coming live with some of those qualifiers as they come through. And apparently from what I was hearing from some of the pro players, there was some really interesting Hearthstone if you want to go and, dig up the VODs and go watch that. Should be interesting to keep an eye on as we go forward with some of the other regions, and hopefully we'll get to see the Asian Games broadcast here as well. I don't know enough about that yet, but hopefully we'll get some information on that as it comes in. We also had the next qualifiers for the May Lobby Legends tournament. So we have 12 qualifiers: Babofat, Oraf. I'm not sure how to pronounce these names that are all in Asian characters, so I won't try to. Dragon, Roger, Alucard, Bofer, Koyomi, Zixo, and Max 7K. Zixo is a name you may recognize. He was an old school constructed Hearthstone player. He played on the same team as Surrender and Hoy way back in the regional Masters Tour qualifier days. He's been playing. He actually left to play Artifact way back when, and has now come back and gotten into BGs pretty hard, and is now qualified for the Lobby Legends tournament. So that'll be fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see how he performs in a completely different game. So that'll be pretty cool.
Surprising number of returning players that we know about here. Like Roger is that Roger.
Oh, that's that Roger. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and Odragon, I believe, was a wild player before he was a very early competitive player in BGs. But I believe he was a wild player before that.
And one of the best BGs players out there. Yeah,
yeah,
he's been playing for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. For those that don't know, this is the Roger that was implicated in the stream sniping scandal, along with Tom60229 and Shaxi. Also a good BGs player, turns out. Just good at games. And then, like, I know Alucard and Bofer have been around for a long time. I don't know the BG's community as well, but some of these names stand out to me.
Yeah, Bofer's a very high-level player. He was actually co-casting with Swebe with the on the DreamHack Community Clash BG's tournament that took place this weekend as well for one of the days. Did a pretty good job casting as well. It was fun to listen to.
Yeah.
So, and we don't have a Vicious Syndicate report because the meta is too fresh. So that's it for the meta and for tournaments. So I guess we could just start talking about our feelings.
We can do that. That's what we do here. Let's go.
Feelings time. So many feelings. Yeah, all the balance changes. I mean, we've had them for 2 days, really? 2.5, right? Because the patch actually came later on Tuesday than we're typically accustomed to.
Yeah,
So less
and it was
time
an
than usual.
in-client patch too. It was it's called a data-only patch, where it's not quite server-side, it's not quite App Store, it's right in the middle, so you didn't have to wait for mobile stores to update, but that also meant it is not a full client update, which means they couldn't fix things like the Nelly bug or the or Branajara or any of the other funky stuff. They could only update scripts, assets, other things that involve downloading data, but not actually changing the functionality of the program. So the Nelly bug is still out there, and the Masters Tour is tomorrow. For those that don't know the Nelly bug, sometimes when your opponent plays Nelly, then you will disconnect.
Yep.
And you have
Happened
to
to me on
restart the
stream
client.
Tuesday night. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
So as a general rule there, if your opponent plays Nelly and you do not see all 3 discovers pop up, immediately restart your client.
Yikes.
Yeah. So in friendly matches, it'll pause, but it's still not ideal.
I mean, you could even just, as soon as you see Nelly, you could just, quit out and go back in. Like, the discover takes long enough, right? That
But then you can't see what they picked. Then you can't see what they picked because you can't hover over the history.
Yeah, but you also, get to not have to miss part of your turn. So, neither here or there. I mean, if you disconnect, you don't get to see part of your history anyway. So,
yeah. Hopefully you don't disconnect. It doesn't happen every time, but it does happen sometimes. So, anyways, that couldn't have been fixed. So yeah, it was later in the day. It was like an afternoon-ish patch, like 3-4 o'clock-ish East Coast time.
Yeah,
which is a few
Eastern.
hours later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did start streaming after it dropped. And this is probably the most time I've had in quite a while in terms of just density of playtime in between recording the show and patch dropping. Because I streamed it Tuesday evening, and then yesterday I did a night stream after a whole bunch of coachings. And then today, when I woke up, I got myself together and streamed again. So we got a 3 solid chunks of, 6 hours or whatever. Yeah, it's... So the question, did the nerfs work? I think is going to be left up to the individual here. I think if we're saying, are they worse? You mentioned before, definitely the druids are less competitive. You can get there a lot more often as the control warrior. I think probably in terms of feel, like it's still going to feel really bad when you get wild growth into nourish into etc. Or when you get alignmented on turn 4 or something. Hopefully, if the win rate stays down on those, people will start doing it less. And I think probably the number one thing for everyone right now is Drekthar. At least that's what I consider sort of the number one. This kind of sticks out in the meta. There are a lot of decks that I'm playing where I sort of just think to myself, okay, what am I going to do if they have Drekthar? And I think I've actually lost a bunch of games where I've planned around being able to respond to Drekthar and then just lost to Lady Athena. Rather than just like making the best play to deal with the things that are already there and hoping they don't have Drekthar, which is probably the better option a lot of the time. So it's got this kind of hold on things, and with Quest Hunter as well, another Drekthar deck where, and that one especially, you're not typically playing around it because you think, okay, the deck has hardly any minions, and then they slam the Drekthar and get enough chip damage, you're kind of screwed, even if it would normally be a strong matchup for you some of the time.
Yeah.
But also, people are playing a bunch of stuff, and so it's hard to plan around that as well.
Yeah, it's still like there are clearly archetypes and strategies and decks and classes that are being experimented with. It's really hard to pin down what is the meta right now because I don't think that there's an honest answer to that question. There are some decks that you can generally plan on seeing. You're probably going to see some kind of Demon Hunter that wants to hit you. You're probably going to see some kind of Quest Hunter. And I don't know, Paladin with Cariel. There are 29 other cards. Yeah, well, some kind of warrior, right? Like it's usually from the depths, but also Quest Warrior is fine.
Yeah.
It's just a question of what will you see when you run into a druid. Will they have alignment? Will they be quest? Will they be beast, which some people are experimenting with? What will you run into when you see a mage? Probably mech, but some people are still trying to make Naga or Wildfire Naga work. What will you see if you run into a warlock? Probably a rogue.
Or sadness.
Possibly. Thief Rogue is also unfortunately fairly sad.
I do occasionally just hit the bad matchup of, they're playing the Phylactery Warlock, and I'm going to say Phylactery Warlock because I guess they run both the Mine and the Shellfish, so they can pick which one to use against you depending on the deck you're playing. So if you're something where milling you isn't going to work out, then they go for the Mine, and if you're something where you're like, if you're a druid, basically, if you're drawing your whole deck, then they go for the Shellfish. Seems questionable, but I guess Grimoire of Sacrifice plus Explosive Sheep has replaced Moarg Grimoire of Sacrifice.
Makes sense.
Boy. Yeah, it's that's worse.
It is worse. It's less flexible.
Yeah.
Moarg, you could at least, double your drain souls for more life.
Yeah.
That still does sound better than trying to summon seven boars without being able to copy one and give it Divine Shield. I'll tell you that much. That still sounds like a day in the park, like a walk in the park comparatively.
That's true. And you can also, like, if you want to get really clever, you can do things like if you have enough damage to win with one Phylactery, then you can do the second Phylactery can be on Sheep, and then you can just set your board off with Immortal Coil or whatever.
Interesting.
There's an option there, but I don't know. Those decks all feel like they have to work really, really hard and play really, really long games to just be acceptable sometimes.
And a lot of things have to go right for them too, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
there are just some matchups you're just never winning. Like the Demon Hunter does not care about your shellfish. It just does not care.
Yeah.
And I feel like Drekthar, I mean, that's a lot of butt that Drekthar puts on because like the minions that it brings out are often have 4 or 5 health, which is really difficult. Like even pulling out 2 Vipers, you would think would be a bad thing against some decks, but that's just like 3, 4 health minions that what are you doing? Like how are you dealing with that on 4? You're not, right? But I mean I'm almost like I get a little bit frustrated with Demon Hunter in general playing against it just because of like how much damage you can put out from hand and how I can't really play around much of it. Cause like it feels like it puts you in a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. Cause like you can taunt and you can put a taunt in the way, but then if they have, if they have glaive and twin slice and multi-strike, it may as well be twin slice, who knows? Like, then they just get to smack you in the face. So it's like, well, I don't want to put a big health taunt in the way because then that's just like a ton of damage in my face. But I don't want to put a small health taunt in the way because they could just Fel Barrage it and then hit me anyway. And so it's like it kind of puts you in this weird spot. I did kind of get there with the priest because I started having lifesteal minions and light showers at least heal you after the damage hits you from the first attack, so that kind of makes it feel a little bit better, but you still die. So it's but you feel like you had a little bit of control of the situation. But it's amazing to me like how much from hand damage like Demon Hunter has. Like I've died from 30 on one turn against Demon Hunter a couple times, and it feels like it's a lot for a 4-set meta for it to be able to put out that much damage. But it also doesn't happen every game. Like things have to go very right for that to happen. But it's also like I'm still trying to figure out like how you play around it appropriately to not let that happen to yourself, and I haven't quite figured it out yet.
Play Cariel.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing, but I would also like to play other classes that don't have Cariel, and that's a little
Seems
bit
like a
more
misplay.
problematic.
Well,
Yeah.
and
It might be.
Cariel has actually made some weird stuff happen where people are just running Viper because of the prevalence of Paladins, and so they want to have a response to that. And so if you want to try these other weapon things, you just get sideswiped, right? I mean, not that I'm a fan in general of Weapon Rogue or Doomhammer Shaman. I've definitely said my complaints with those, although my biggest complaint with the Rogue was the stealth. But trying to do that right now with all the Vipers that are there for the Paladins is not going to go great for you. And then Quest Hunter just would be running 2 Vipers, even if not because of Drekthar, which is sort of a weird place to be in.
Yeah. And even the Paladins are running Viper now because that's the only way you win the mirror.
Uh-huh.
Like if you have Viper and your opponent doesn't, you just win the mirror. So
Well,
now, yeah, it's I figured that out after a couple of games where I lost the mirror because I didn't have a Viper. I'm like, wait, why is this Sir Finley in my deck that shouldn't be there? That should be a Viper instead. And then I still lost the mirror, but at least I lost it because I didn't draw the Viper and not because, or they found the Viper and their smite was bigger than my smite.
Well, and that weapon, part of what's so threatening, but in a less obvious way, is just that you get to hit them for 2 forever.
Yeah.
And so in the mirror, that's a way of just like getting in some chip damage. Are you low enough for me to kill you with smite yet? I don't know, maybe. And so it's this dance of, healing or trying to set up taunts, etc. I think that's one of the most frustrating mirrors to me, honestly, because it's this awkward back and forth. Sometimes it's just a blowout of, one person can carry, the other one doesn't. But I mean, that doesn't feel good either. Other times it's the righteous defense ping pong because, someone does righteous defense just because they need to. And then if they play the minion that got buffed, the other person does righteous defense on that. And it's just like, who can get it to actually land on smite so that they can just kill the opponent from nowhere? It's very strange.
Yeah.
This
And then,
sounds
does your mutinous hit the right thing? And like do you happen to eat the smite with your mutinous? Like, like, that's just GG.
Do you mutinous the thing that Righteous Defense landed on, such as maybe a Pyromancer, and then they Righteous Defense your mutinous? Like it's
it gets very silly. It does.
Yeah. I'm just gonna play Mech Paladin. Okay, you two can do this. I'm just gonna play Mech Paladin and just make a bunch of robots. And Mech Paladin, there was a brief shining moment yesterday where it was the #1 deck at rank 1, at top 1K Legend on HSR. It was the actual best deck. It is currently one of the tier 1 decks. Currently, right this exact moment, is Mech Paladin. And that is not what I expected. But the Divine Shields are obviously good against Quest Hunter. The Endless Waves of Garbage are obviously good against Control Warrior. And then you ban Demon Hunter in Conquest or lose to it on Ladder.
I beat a Demon Hunter with it yesterday. I felt like I should have gotten an achievement for that, but I did manage to do it.
You drew Samuro, right?
I probably drew Samuro, yeah.
Pretty sure you did. Fairly confident. Because that's how you win that matchup.
Yep.
Because they go under you and they go over you. So you have this brief window in the middle where you cannot lose to Battleworn Vanguard if you have Samuro on turn 4. On exactly turn 4. And then you can do some stuff and play a Bubble Bot. Then you can get there. But you lose to the early snowballs, and then when you stop that, unless you taunt up tremendously, then you lose to the damage from hand. And even if you Bubble Bot, if they have Puffer multi with Glaive, you're actually just giving them more things to kill you with.
Yeah.
So
you're just kind of like trying to like get all the hand buffs and like, you know, buff something off the Seafloor Savior and get something big off that and like get a big Leviathan and use that to trade off if you manage to live that long. And it's just like everything has to go right. But those mechs get big and hard to remove pretty quickly, and the Divine Shields are pretty hard for most of the control classes to deal with, except for exactly Brawl, because like most of the rest of Warriors like removal is damage based.
Yep.
And that doesn't work very well against Divine Shields. Like Warrior's very good at clearing one board, but it's like Death Rattle minions has always kind of been the way you would get around Control Warrior, but Divine Shields do pretty much the same thing because it's kind of doing it ahead of time. Like you would need to be running like Whirlwind or something, which nobody is, in order to get around the Divine Shield. So it makes them like, do I spend 2 Shield Shatters on this board just to deal with it? Like, I really don't want to, but I really kind of have to. And then if you have to spend 2 Shield Shatters on that board, you don't have them for the next board, and eventually like there's just a couple of big minions that stick, and that's all you need.
Yeah, it's the against control decks. Even if you're just playing 1 minion a turn, you just never run out of stuff, and they can never keep up with everything. So like I've enjoyed playing it, and you get to make giant numbers over and over again, but it does feel more like you're playing the matchups than playing the turns, just because you're kind of prescribed into what you're going to end up doing. It's going to be making big, chunky robots, and you get some cool plays every so often, and you get to play a lot of Leviathans, but it feels somewhat narrow in how much agency you have over how the games play out. It's more about, from the matchup generally how it goes, and the games you win can take a while, because you just grind people out, and the games you lose are pretty fast. But I don't know. It's fun. It's all right.
It's a mid-range deck. We don't get those very often, right? I mean,
we get them every 4-set meta.
Basically.
Yeah. And that's what we have.
Yeah, I was going roughly 50-50 with it because I kept hitting Demon Hunters. But I do love a good mid-range deck. And the times where you get the toolkit on one and then, play a solid Divine Shield and just get that curve, they get very large very quickly, and Bubble Bot lets you, since there's not really comeback mechanics, it lets you just lock certain decks out because they can't hit your face anymore.
Yeah. Like Jewel Kit, Coin, Righteous Protector on 1, into Seafloor Savior on 2, into some big 3-drop on 3, just like snowballs pretty quickly.
And I just love the chains of Amalgam into Gorilla Bot into Amalgam. Like they just keep discovering each other sometimes, and you just keep going. That's something I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, and so looking at the stats here on HS Replay, live stats right now, Legend since the patch. Look at the high level decks here. This is Legend since the patch. It's Naga DH, Quest Hunter, Amulet Mech Mage is listed separately from non-Amulet Mech Mage, but is doing better, I guess. Mech Paladin. 4 different warrior decks in Tier 2. Quest, Charge, Control, and Quest Control. And then Holy Paladin. Those are all the decks that HSR currently sees above 50% win rate in Legend. There are 220-something thousand games here. Pretty good early look. So a lot of these have been optimized already, but we're seeing some new stuff here. I don't think the mech decks being this high up was anything anyone expected. But also, there are only 5 classes in the top half of this list, above 50% win rate. So, if you scroll down to the Tier 3 range, well, Fell Demon Hunter is just below it. You get regular Mech Mage. Then you get 3 Druid decks, Ramp, Anaconda, Beast Druid. You get Naga Mage, which is listed as a small spell for some reason. The only Shaman deck on here, Burn Shaman. You got a Pirate Rogue, and then you keep going down, and you get Priest and Warlock territory in Tier 4, below 45% win rate, 3 different Warlock decks, 4 different Priest decks, all down here in the dumps. So there are options being explored. There are things that people are trying out, but when you look at kind of the delineation here between the have and have not classes, Druid, I think, is actually not even that bad because people are playing a lot of old lists and they're bringing the win rate down. So, I would even consider that to be a class with potential and hope. But you get down to, when you look at all the Warlock decks and all the Priest decks, they're just chilling down here. I don't know what you do with this.
It does not feel good. I mean, Matt at Arms and Matt plays Warlock, I play Priest. I've been I felt like getting close to 50 with Dragon Priest was good, right? That's better than my Priest experiences prior to the patch has been. So from that perspective, it's a win, but it's just the problem with massive damage from hand is that when your health tops out at 30 and you don't have Cariel, it's very, very hard to keep up with that. When your opponent can burst you down from 20 or 25 or sometimes 30, if you don't have any way to mitigate that with armor, with Cariel, if you're just relying on taunts and healing, that's not enough. And that's been the problem with a lot of these from hand decks. And Warlock's dealing with the same thing, right? It's got all the healing in the world, but it doesn't matter if your opponent can 30 you. So that was the problem with Garrett Rogue way back when, and some of the other decks that could just kill you from your starting life total. And that just kind of takes those decks out, especially when they don't have a tempo option. Shadow Priest is not even on the list. It doesn't exist anymore because Raise Dead going away just made that a non-starter. You just do not have enough damage without being able to get back Void Touch Attendant. It's just way too hard to get anything to happen. Zoo's not a thing either. Murloc Warlock is kind of a meme, right? But the decks that we're seeing are Curse Warlock, Shellfish Priest, Boar Priest, the control-ish and combo list, even the tempo versions, just they don't exist.
Well, it's interesting. I think this is one of those situations where there's a lot of variety being held down by just the best aggro deck, being Hunter, because it punished Dread Prison Glaive punishes opposing minions, particularly with multi-strike. Because we had Glaive without multi-strike before, and there it was, it was 6 at meta, so it just wasn't good enough to make most lists. I could tell it was a good card, but it was a lot more fair because you could never hit face twice with it. Multi-strike kind of gave you Wind Fury sometimes, where you hit the minion or hit the taunt, whatever, and then you just also hit their face. Aggro Demon Hunter is just so much better at board than everything else, plus Drekthar. And it means that you're not really going to be able to beat Demon Hunter as some kind of, taunt or beast druid or a Murloc Warlock. Murloc Warlock was one of the things that was pretty good against the ramp druid briefly, but you just get wrecked by Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
The decks that we have that may seem aggressive, like the Paladins or the Mages, those are pretty solidly mid-range decks. So we don't have, I think the biggest indicator is I don't think Face Hunter really exists right now. And
Yeah.
it's not like there are bad cards for Face Hunter. It's that Face Hunter doesn't beat the best aggro deck, which is Demon Hunter.
Yeah, and I mean it's also the way that all that damage comes together from Demon Hunter. Also because like generally what you're doing at that point in the game is you're just throwing one big taunt out there, right, to try to save yourself. So what happens is that they clear the taunt, then they get to hit you in the face again. Then they've got predations to throw at you for free, usually. And because they've cleared your big thing, now they can Fel Barrage your face also. Right? So it's like clearing the taunt also helps them do more face damage. So it all kind of comes together. Again, this is best case scenario, but it happens often enough. And you know, I always think I'm safe and I never am when I'm at a high life total and you know, maybe sitting with a taunt, or I'll put the taunt down to like low health, right? And I'll like I'm like, because I'm sitting there with, you know, when I'm playing the game and I'm like I was playing Naga Wildfire Mage, and I'm like, I don't really love the fact that this Reckless Apprentice is on the board with 5 health right now.
Yeah,
'Cause
you
that
think
just
Treasure
makes
Guard
me-
would be the sort of thing you play to be good against an aggro deck, and it just loads up 5 damage
Yeah.
for you. It's
Exactly. It's like helping.
Yeah.
them.
And is in the aggro deck because when you pull it off Drekthar, it protects your other 3-drop that you get off Drekthar and the 4/4 itself. Like it's so backwards.
Yeah, academically it is interesting to see this dynamic of playing minions. You have to play in a different kind of way, but in reality, I think there is some limitation of the format there. Though I'm going to push back. I don't think that Murloc Warlock is being held back by Demon Hunter. I think it's being held back by Murloc Warlock.
So I definitely played a bunch of it towards the start of the expansion and did quite well with it.
Yeah,
So I don't know. Maybe it just would have fallen off.
No,
but-
you're not wrong about it being ramp druided. Like that was one of the only decks in the prior week of qualifiers that had a positive win rate against it.
yeah.
It's just that, you know, like you lose to everything else. But
It plays in a fashion somewhere between the current mech decks and like Rush Warrior from Barons. Like it's somewhere in that ballpark. I think that's not a bad thing. It's just not quite good enough and doesn't have damage from hand, so like there's not really a compelling reason to run it. But I don't really know if this format is being held back by a deck that has too much or by some classes having not enough, because in 4-set formats I've always
Yeah.
felt like this, and it's always been fixed by more cards. Always been fixed by a mini set. They buff here and there, but you know, this is the nature of what 4-set metas feel like a lot of the time. It feels pretty familiar. And so, like, again, I don't think it's bad, but it's not usually what I get excited for in terms of metas. But I still want to log in and play a bit, because I definitely have not gotten enough time to play what I want. Just got to find a list that excites me.
And yeah, I don't know that it matters, at least in the moment, whether it is the Demon Hunter's cards being too strong or them just being, or the other classes' cards being too weak. The Demon Hunter's cards are definitely stronger than the others. So it's holding them down, whether that gets solved by adding more better cards or doing buffs or some combination of buffs and nerfs to the Demon Hunter. I think is a little immaterial in the moment, but it for sure is at a stronger place right now. And I've been seeing decks doing this sort of hybrid thing. I guess it must be better against the other Demon Hunters or something, because otherwise I'm not sure why you would do it. But they're running like Felgorger and sometimes even School Teacher, and then Glaive Shark. So they still have the early Naga, the 1/3. I think they then also run the 2-drop that makes minions when you attack. So a lot of those same early game minions as the Drekthar lists. But in order to run Glaive Shark, which they still have Dread Prison Glaive, so they can do it on turn 4. And then they can do tons of damage with Lady Sethino, and I think probably have Jace as well. It's this kind of in between Fel DH and the aggressive lists that has pretty consistently, I think, been better than going all in on Fel-DH, in my opinion, because going all in on Fel-DH, you are getting wrecked by these Mutinous or Vol'jin. So having this, you try and get as much early chip damage as you can, and you can still have crazy Sathino plays or finish off with Jace. That's been interesting to see.
Yeah, there's just, why would you do that when you could Drekthar? So,
Well,
I mean, that's the choice, right?
Because you're going for like having the response that beats the Drekthar. But yeah,
yeah,
'cause
I
you get to run
wouldn't.
2 ofs instead
yeah.
of a 1
You
of.
get to run 2 of, I wouldn't bet on that being better than the Drekthar builds, right? Like, I wouldn't
It beats
consistently
different
say,
things.
yeah, it's a different spread, but also just that you don't have a card that has a 70% win rate in your mulligan.
Yeah.
I mean, when you put it like that,
I do. Yeah, so it's when you have this combination of a limited card pool, deck building challenges, and some pretty powerful decks that are pretty hostile to minions, you can play a bunch of minions in this format. And it's okay for there to be pillars of the format. There's nothing wrong with that. And we're very, very early in, and Naga Demon Hunter was well refined right before. Galen even said they're going to keep an eye on it. If they need to change it, they need to change it. We're going to see how it performs this weekend, because also, if I were building a lineup this weekend, I would want to be hostile to Demon Hunter. And I think that you could find a few decks that do that. I think that's something that you could do if you were building with that in mind. It's not unbeatable, but it is currently the best deck despite being pretty widely noticed beforehand and people being aware of it afterwards. And I'd also expect that we see quite a few flashy lethals on screen this weekend in bad matchups. So
yeah, I mean, I think that the Masters Tour might make that drumbeat a little bit louder. I think that it's definitely not unbeatable, and like, it's one of those decks that you do have to pilot it well in order to get those kinds of results out of it. It's not like there is a skill, a skill ceiling on it, or where, or maybe floor. I don't know. There was some wall. Who knows? But there is a way you can play that really incorrectly and just flail, right? And that's whereas with Druid you could play it poorly, but it was a lot harder to. Like, Ramp Druid was a pretty forgiving deck as long as you didn't throw away the coin by ramping a wild growth into nothing or something like that. Like, it was pretty hard to screw it up. You do need to really be focused on what your game plan is with Demon Hunter in order to get the best results out of it, which is good, right? Like, if there's going to be a deck that's that powerful, it should be powerful, in the right hands. Which is, it's fine for there to be powerful decks. It's fine for there to be villains of the format.
Yeah. I feel like we're sounding fairly critical here, and instead I just feel kind of lost. That's kind of what I feel.
Yeah.
Is I have to submit Conquest lineups tonight. I don't know what to do. I feel like in terms of a Conquest format, it is not super duper polarized, just because you don't really have more than 5 or 6 classes you can realistically consider. And that means it's really hard to target something because you have just such a small number of really cohesive decks that you're going to leave up some kind of weakness unless you decide to go in some hard target plan. If you're really planning on seeing Mech Paladin Quest Warrior, you could bring Shaman maybe, because then Snowfall Guardian might actually do something. If you're really planning on seeing Quest Hunter and targeting it, then you probably bring a Druid. And I imagine that we'll see a good number of Druids in the Masters Tour this weekend because of that specific matchup. But what would be the reason you'd bring a Warlock? What would be the reason you'd bring a Priest? Don't really know. I don't even know really what the reason would be that you'd bring a Pirate Rogue. Like, I'm just not sure what matchup we're targeting with that. So it's interesting that it's just the format's underexplored. It's only been a couple days, but I still just am completely at a loss of what do I do that makes sense if I want to consistently win and try some different stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the answer is at least for Conquest, you play the stuff that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
That, and just make sure you're not bringing a knife to a gunfight. Like, that's pretty much all you can do. Like, there's not really like there was a lot of flexibility in like the last minute, and that's normal for a 6-set meta, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, most classes have multiple ways they can go. You have like probably like 10 or 15 decks that are all viable in different configurations, including some things that you could not practice on ladder because they get destroyed. And you could, you know, find a lineup that, you know, would have good matchups against most of what you're expecting to see. You can make a meta read and you could profit from that. I feel like these conquest formats really just come down to player skill with the decks, right? Like the matchups are, I mean, there are some decks that you just can't bring because they're gonna run into terrible matchups, but there aren't enough of those, especially in like a 4-deck lineup, that a lot of it's just going to come down to like how much have you learned about these decks in the last like 2 weeks, right? And that's fine too, right? Like it's okay. Like we talked a lot in like a month ago about like the checkerboard format of the meta, right? Like that you just couldn't really get anywhere because if you picked this deck to climb with, then you got hard countered by that. I don't feel like that's this meta right now, right?
No.
Like you can bring a control deck and get rolled by aggro Demon Hunter. Like we've talked about that last week, where you know you got like not like you know killed from 22, and it could have been more, right? And that's not what you're expecting as, you know, a control deck that has armor available to it. So I mean,
And I've
that's
played.
kind of good,
I was
but
doing a
it also
coaching
doesn't feel right.
yesterday. I was doing a coaching yesterday where we were playing aggro DH, and then we ran into a Kazakhstan shaman, and they discovered bracing cold off of their school teacher, and then they macahed it, gained 10 life, reduced some health. They snowfalled us into snowfall bird, and we died. Right? There are games you can have where that'll happen. It's just a question of reliability and consistency. But we're not in a format where you know how the game's going to go based on the portrait. We're not really there. We're not in a format where you even know how the game's going to go based on the mulligan. If they have a Drekthar on curve, it's probably going to be worse for you than if they don't. But otherwise, it could come down to who gets their hero card, how does the sequencing go, and there's still a lot of strategies that are worth exploring. But right now, it's interesting that a lot of things feel like they're missing some pieces, and the stuff that doesn't feel like it's defining which directions you get to go in. The boundaries between Demon Hunter and Quest Hunter in particular feels pretty tough to navigate. And then you have the control decks, the far side, that are being explored, and those are the most interesting decks in the format right now, where people are going with From the Depths and Warrior, both charge and control, where people are going with maybe Kazakhstan Paladin, maybe not, maybe Holy, maybe not. Where that stuff is going, I think, is fascinating and will shape that far boundary of the format, but they have to keep up with both Quest Hunter and DH, and those are pretty difficult boundaries to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I do wonder if Kazakhstan is going to fall out of the control list. It feels like probably not, because you do need something at the top end for a control mirror, because like it's one of those things where if they have it and you don't, you just lose on the spot. Like, you know, we were thinking about like, okay, well, maybe failing From the Depths will be a thing. It's not a thing.
No.
Right. But you know, I
Sorry,
think
Edelweiss. Sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I think that's also what kind of makes this feel a little bit samey, right? Is that because there is that kind of undertone there that Kazakhstan's still around. He's not in like Druid, but I think we all we had our fun with Kazakhstan. Like but you know, the games that you lose to, you know, Annoyo Horn into Canopic Jars and Wand of Disintegration, or where you know, get Embers of Ragnaros, like they still don't feel good. So that's I think that kind of, you know, feeds into some of the sameness. You don't see it as often though. But when you do see it, it's like a lot, like in general, like psychologically, like a loss is like 3 more times more likely to imprint on your memory than a win in general. Right. And so like when you lose and it feels bad, then it hits your brain more. I think that's true for any meta. But I think that some of the ways that you lose in this meta like you remember them more than when you get to do the cool thing. But that's flipped, right? Because like the loss that you get destroyed by is the one that somebody got to do the cool thing. And, that's good for them, but they're also not going to remember that when they get, bursted down from 30 by a demon hunter or wiped out by wand disintegration or whatever.
I am hopeful that after the Masters Tour this time next week, we will instead be talking about the cool stuff that we didn't see coming. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yep.
I'm hoping there's some cool strategies and memes and decks that people are just keeping locked up, secret, that we don't know about. And maybe some of these things get figured out over the weekend. I know Foggy8 posted a dual phylactery warlock that he had gotten the top 200 with. I'm curious to see what happens. As of right now, I am, I'm enjoying logging into Hearthstone, but also even though I want to play more, I have yet to see a deck list when I'm scrolling that really jumps off the page at me, and this feels very reminiscent of Barons, where after a month-ish, I will scroll and I'll look and I'll be like, wow, a bunch of people playing a bunch of things. Do I want to play any of these? Maybe not right now, but mini set's not far, buff's not far, patch, whatever. I don't know. Either way, maybe we have some cool stuff next week. I hope so.
I feel kind of strange about it because in Barons, I did have a deck that just really resonated with me that I loved so much, and that was the Rush Warrior with, conditioning, and you still had ETC and all that stuff. Tried that, you just can't do it right now. I mean, there's not enough Rush minions.
Yeah.
You can try and do a similar thing with Taunt. Taunt is not it right now. So, yeah, I the closest thing I could maybe go with right now is Control Warrior, but I don't always want to play matchups that are that long.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling a lot more lost this time around than I did last.
Oh, man.
Meta.
Yeah.
If I could have Baron's Rogue back, I'd be thrilled.
If I could have Baron's Priest back, I'd be thrilled, right?
No.
No.
But that's the thing, right? It's like that's like this should be my meta, and it kind of is. Like, I do enjoy playing Control Warrior. I enjoy playing Control Paladin. I wish they were Priest, but I'll love the one I'm with. But it's also, the games that I lose, I feel like I'm not sure how I was supposed to win them. And maybe the answer is I'm not, and that's okay too. But when you it does feel bad, like when you do the thing that you're supposed to do and it doesn't, and you do it perfectly, or what looks like perfectly, and you still get bursted from 30, then it's like, okay, well, that wasn't a great use of 15 minutes. But I think that this is the nature of a 4-set meta, is that you just don't have enough tools, so the decks you can build are limited, right? I mean, this is why I've been advocating for a long time of like 1 in 1 out at 5 sets, right? Because like 5 sets feels kind of like the sweet spot. Because 6 sets we start getting into like everything is broken, and I mean, not that 5-set metas are perfect, but I mean, this is what we have, and if we've seen this happen, and then we've seen a mini set come in that give a couple of decks that were almost there, a couple of tools. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a broken Murloc for Warlock, or another broken Curse spell, or like literally anything for Priest.
You see cards for Priest, you'll be very excited.
Yeah, I would be extremely excited. Or I don't know what else necessarily, or something that would pay off like Radiance of Azshara, or a little bit better. Like there are things that they can give us in the mini set too that will kind of jumpstart this, because it is. And because the mini set kind of fills in the gaps that are there, and we saw this with like with Death Rattle Demon Hunter last year, where Death Rattle Demon Hunter was kind of a meme, and then they brought in like Fel Rattler, and there was maybe one other thing in the mini set, and then Death Rattle Demon Hunter became a real deck.
Yeah, it was alright before, but it got Fel Rattler and the 3/2 Ooze, so like it was solid. And Shaman, Remember Shaman in Barons was nothing, and Shaman in Caverns was everything. So like it just instantly catapulted with Wailing Vapor and Dungeoneer, because the third card in that Shaman mini set, Perpetual Flame, was not good enough at the time. Turns out that would change. Quite a set of 3 cards: Wailing Vapor, Primal Dungeoneer, Perpetual Flame. If any class gets a mini set of that power level, you have a deck. You've got something there.
I mean, it could happen again with Shaman. there's been this weird thing with there's just not a lot of overload recently, and we've been kind of excited about. It's nice that Shaman has an identity that's not credit card debt, right? But it also is a requirement to play the Shaman quest. So if that's a deck you liked, you kind of can't do it right now because there's just not enough overload cards. So
Yeah.
they could make 2 good overload cards, maybe something that heals, and suddenly Quest Shaman is on the map. I mean, you do have defensive tools in Perpetual Flame and Canal Slogger. So
Do we want another quest to be a meta deck?
I don't know.
I don't know that we do.
It is pretty slow compared to other ones.
I mean, I'm kind of down. It depends on the quest, but like, I don't know. Quest Shaman is the kind of control deck that I like to play because you get to make big boom booms. I don't know what they're gonna do. I have no idea what they're gonna do. But the three of us, tend to align with metas that have the shifting, churning options that are inherent to 5-set environments. I don't think that there's anything like wrong with the current standard. I don't think it is inherently flawed or anything like that, but I think we're all having a little trouble mustering enthusiasm or direction right now, just because it's not really clear what to do, and a lot of classes feel like they have a bunch of experiments that haven't finished running yet. So I think that means that instead of belaboring this point any longer, we should probably just wind down here. But I am definitely curious to see what decks come out of the Masters Tour this weekend, and hopefully we'll have some more exciting technology to talk about in Dexplanations next week.
Yes, I'm hoping so. Even just something to surprise and delight us would be fantastic.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But for now, we're going to call it here. We have many folks to like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website, coinconcede.com. Find our contact info, show notes, Patreon information. You can support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats and our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. We're into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede. Like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. To like some CC swag, heading over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Doge DK, Proby1, Kresh, Cap, Beast Squatch, David P, Fade Black Walu, Jeremy T. Got some coin concedes here. Go ahead and start Edelweiss.
So my coin concedes this week are to Pizza, APX Void, and Superior David, who all threw me raids during my night stream. I kind of only do night streams when my wife is away, because then she isn't coming in the middle of the night to go get me at 1 a.m. or whatever, and I can just stream on until 4 a.m. And yeah, that's what happened. And we ended up picking up a bunch of raids. Just, it was nice. Yeah, I'm not used to that. So thank you to all of them.
What about you, Steve?
Well, I'm gonna coin concede to Swaybank, who was in town in both of our towns. Here in Boston and then down to New York, and we both got to share meals with her. And Sway is a lovely person and a lot of fun, and we had a really great time. I had some hollow French toast. It was delightful.
Ooh.
It was very, very good. I ended up finding, because I haven't been to Boston in since the pandemic started. I haven't been into Boston because I live 35 miles away, and so we were trying to find a place, and then nothing was taking reservations, and I just kind of basically closed my eyes and found this one spot, and near Government Center, and it was amazing, and the company helped too. So it was a lot of fun to get to see her and hang out with her in person. Would recommend, and hopefully we'll be able to do it for a little bit longer next time.
Yeah. I'll also coin concede Sway because, hung out, good food, good time, Got a few coin concedes here to Forrest Bates, or in particular to his son Benjamin. First-time legend. Congratulations, Benjamin. Well done. Good job. He tracked his results with a manual spreadsheet, just like his dad. Big props. Family lineage runs strong. Jonathan Vigil, also known as Vigil SC. He is a supporter of our show. Won a raffle and rocked a totally sweet coin concede hoodie on his stream. So, Jonathan, thank you for doing that. For those of you that like The Ghost Inside, yeah, me too. For those of you that don't, go listen to The Ghost Inside. He sings. He sings real good. And then Heart Queen, who just had me on an episode of Heart to Heart, which is an interview. It's more about the people side of who I am, which is definitely not usually what I talk about during these interviews, but got to cover a lot of food questions and also some Hearthstone stuff. So if you like hearing about Hearthstone and food, you should go listen to that interview. It's on her Twitch and should be hopefully on YouTube in the near future. So yeah, I guess that's our show. So keep calm and don't play taunts in a multi-strike. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
All right, stopping recording.
Okay.
Cool.
And that was not 3 hours, so it did not end. That's good.
Excellent.
I have no idea what format this is going to save it into, so
Wait, what?
Audio.
I apologize in advance.
Oh no.
It's fine.
Oh no.
Did you not record?
No, no, we're
No,
fine.
because it's
no,
going to be in like random.
about Wicked Good stuff.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
Audition can handle whatever. You gotta worry
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
It's for Angry Chicken this week. My Audition didn't record properly, so I had to pull it from. I downloaded the Twitch VOD and plopped it in, and it worked fine.
Wow.
Yep.
I remember those days. That is not fun when that happens.
It was not. All right, stream.
Okay.
I think that we are going to pull the stream down, but thank you so much for hanging out. See you next week.
You should send them somewhere.
Oh, where do we want to go? Pick someone.
Yeah.
Lope?
Sure.
Luke? Oh no, Luke Pierce playing Valor. Never mind.
Who's live? Somebody pick someone. Anyone chat? You got anyone? Yeah, definitely Lope. Yeah, send it over there. Let's go. Ugh. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out. And we will go say hi to Cantaloupe.
Bye.
Bye.